Welcome everyone to PAC-B TV. This is another installment of Ask the Expert. I'm Kim Dryden, a volunteer with PAC-B TV, and I'm here today talking with Lauren Russett of Russett PR. Lauren, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. So before we get started into the topic of today, which is how small businesses can do business online a little bit better, especially in these pandemic times. Before we get into the details of that too much, I would love if you could just explain who are you and how did you get into this work?
Yeah, so I grew up in Baldwinsville. I was here pretty much my whole life. And then I graduated and I decided to move to Chicago to go to school. So I'm still a full-time master's student. But I was in Chicago for a few years. And then when COVID-19 hit, I figured it was a good time for me to pivot and take my experiences back to Beeville. So I moved back here pretty much in April. And then I opened an office right in the village in June. And so basically what I do is my goal is just to help elevate brands. So that means just trying to figure out specifically what brands and small businesses, local businesses need, and trying to fill that gap. So in the digital sense, primarily. So that could be anything from social media and branding or press or crisis management.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is all so very relevant too in this age of, businesses having to move online just to stay afloat. So that's kind of what we're going to chat a little bit about today. So to get into that, let's start with the basics. So I'm a small business owner. For other small business owners out there that are watching, where do you need to have a presence? Where do you need to be visible online?
So I think the best place to start with your foundation is your website. And your website doesn't have to be super elaborate. It basically just has to give a somewhat overview of your story, what you offer, and what needs you're trying to fill. And then if you are a business owner that sells a physical product, like do you have your store set up online? Can people go to your website and buy a product, you handle the shipping, or you have a drop shipper? Or can they book your service on your website, which isn't always necessarily, you don't always need to have it on your website. But if you are in the beauty industry, it might be easier to have an option for people to go on and book. Or on your website, is your phone number clear? Do they know how to get in touch with you to ask additional questions and stuff like that? And then social media is a big player in businesses now, especially with COVID, because it's an avenue to communicate with your customers without them having to come into your business. And then social media itself, though, has its own, what works for one business isn't going to work necessarily for your business. It's very unique. So saying like where people should be on social media is kind of hard because it just depends. My thing is to focus on maybe one or two platforms when you're, especially if you're just starting out in the social media space, if you haven't really done too much social media marketing previously, and you're trying to pivot into it now due to COVID, or now just because you're realizing that, it's time to get on social media. And then just really being able to figure out on those platforms which one is going to perform the best. So your business, if it's business to business, it might not be Instagram like a lot of people might think. It might be Facebook, LinkedIn primarily, or Twitter. If you are in the beauty or in the fashion space, it's probably going to be Instagram. But it's all very dependent on what you think, what your industry is like, plus where you're located, and what that demographic kind of looks like.
Yeah, I think it can be useful to think like, where are the people I want to reach? Where are my potential clients hanging out online? If you're looking at like a younger demographic, probably Instagram more so than Facebook, and even
Right.
like TikTok, which I think can be a little bit intimidating, but can be a really useful way to connect with people in like a fun and interesting way as well.
Yeah, and all these social media platforms, they all have an opportunity to work for you. So the effort that you put in, could turn into a higher sales volume that month. Or TikTok, TikTok is very lucky where you might have one really good video, or even just a video that you didn't spend too much time on, go viral, and then you have all the online sales. So it just is, it's an avenue that I think all businesses need to tap, but I also don't think it has to be as stressful and as demanding as a lot of people might think it is.
So just to looking at it kind of high level again, basically what you're saying is have a website. It can be simple, needs to have the basics, and then consider some add-ons that might make your actual like business operations a little bit easier. You mentioned like plugins that can help with booking. And then on the social media side, focus on maybe one to get started, understand how that works. Anything else, any other like web presence, different places online people should think about?
I think email marketing is still really relevant and really big. But I think with email marketing, it comes with the brand foundation. So if your website and you have maybe one focused social media account, maybe you're really dedicated to your Instagram account and you can lead people to your email list, then I think email is also a huge way to get, still to this day, really upfront with your target audience. And then I think digital landscape, I think the other thing would probably be, I think that's it.
One thing that drives me nuts is if businesses don't have their like Google profiles up to date. So if you put it in maps, like I do want to go get pickup from this place, but I'm not sure where it is. If you haven't updated your address, your contact information on Google, that's going to slow people down.
Right.
Like profiles on like Yelp and TripAdvisor, especially if you're in like the food industry, like make sure everywhere, like give yourself a Google, make sure wherever people are going to find you, that information is
right. That, and also just making sure, I think another big thing that you see online is that like even on people's websites, like the information is so outdated. Like their hours, maybe it says they're open Monday through Sunday, but they're actually only open Wednesday through Sunday.
Yeah. Especially when it changes so much right now. And yeah, I do a little bit of
COVID guidelines and stuff are on there too.
Yeah. And I think like as somebody with a little bit of background in web design, I always tell people, find somebody who can make the changes quickly or get to a different platform where it's easier for you to do it yourself. Because you have like, if you don't understand WordPress and it's scary and complicated and you're just not going to change your hours, you're doing your business and your customers a disservice. Definitely. Talk to somebody who can help you, transition to a simpler platform, something that's more like click and drag, or, just take a tutorial or something so you understand how to change the banner on top so that you can communicate quickly and efficiently the changes that your business is going through so your clients can actually come, give you business.
Right. Definitely.
So we talked about where, how about the what of this? What should small businesses think about when they're putting content? We talk about that a lot. First, maybe tell me about content, and then what does that look like when you're putting yourself out there as a small business owner?
Right. So content kind of taps that, the photos and the images and the text and the call to actions that you're putting out on social media or on your website. And when it comes to what to post, it's all dependent on your industry, all dependent on your business itself. But the number one thing to remember is only post things that are very authentic to you and your brand and your business, because your followers will see that. So if you're just trying to create social media content based off of like you read an article online and they say you have to post all of this content like quotes and all these really professionally styled photos, which those are all great, but if it's really awkward and not really giving a purpose to your social media or your business, then I think it's best to stay clear of it. I think when it comes to creating content, it's always create content with thinking about the need that you're filling. So use your social media as a way to sell for you authentically, and don't just go on social media just to only push out your services or your product. People like to see the behind the scenes. They like to see the personal side of you as the business owner or your employees, your business itself. If you have a brick and mortar store, like showing the pictures of the place itself. And there's so many things you can post. You can create videos. But I think the simpler the better, especially just now. You don't have to do too much. Don't put too much thought into it. I think always go with your gut when creating that content. So,
Yeah. Can you give some examples of like if you're this type of business, what kind of content might you post?
yeah. So if you are a hairstylist, obviously the one thing you're going to post is hair. But in that you can show you're able to show your skill, and you're able to promote that need that you're able to fill. Like maybe only you're able to do a hairstyle a certain way. And at that time, that's when the person who's looking for it is going to see it. If you are a roofing company, showing, who I work with regularly, showing the behind the scenes of putting up the roof. So he'll take pictures of the process of them putting up the roof, the before and the after. If you are a very business to business, posting about, I guess you could say, like, your services in a way that's, you can use stock images. So like I sometimes will use stock image just as a background of a call to action. So if I have a giveaway going, or if I'm trying to promote a specific service, just creating some content that's fun and inviting. So focusing kind of a little bit more on your graphic design than probably your photography skills. Important, but yeah, I think just
Great examples. And I would say that especially in a small community like Baldwinsville, where we know most of the people, or at least some of the people that we're doing business with. And I think people here really value that human connection. Like, I want to support businesses who I know because I care about the owners.
right.
So if you post content like the behind the scenes stuff you're talking about, like, this is how the bread gets made, this is me roasting my coffee, cutting hair, I think that gives people an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better, and makes them that much more likely to see you as a person that they care about, and they want to give you their business and want to give you money, over someone that just seems, here's 80 pictures of
Here's a quote.
And
Right.
yeah, those are great examples. One thing you mentioned in there that I feel like is a word that gets thrown around a lot, which people may or may not be familiar with, is authenticity. Can you explain that a little bit more for our audience who might not be familiar with that, or maybe just heard it so much it doesn't mean anything anymore?
So I'm a huge advocate for being authentic to your brand, which means don't do anything that feels uncomfortable, or you don't just always go with what everyone else is doing, especially when it comes to social media. I think you know your business better than anyone, as the business owner, and that allows you to kind of figure out what the vision and the goal is for all of your social media, and your website and your branding. So I think it's a matter of, I just taught a workshop on kind of being authentic with your social media strategy. And I think one thing that in my industry is that everyone tries to push the perspective of having to be everywhere all the time online, having to have a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and a Snapchat account for your business.
That sounds exhausting.
Right. And if you're not passionate about social media, or if you don't like it, or if you don't have the time, like I said, focus on one or two platforms. And if you wake up one day and if you're stressing about social media, don't post that day, because your followers and your customers and your clients can tell when posts just aren't be posted because you're excited about your business. People can pick up on when things are literally just posted because they feel that the business owner feels the obligation to post. So I'm a huge advocate for just doing what is best for you and your business, because there's so many moving parts that of owning a business, that social media is just one piece of a big puzzle. And I think posting consistently is very important. But I'm a huge advocate of, if it doesn't make sense for you that day or that week or whatever it may look like, then don't. I think there's a lot of pressure, and I don't think there has to be.
Yeah, better to do one channel well. Like if you like Instagram because that feels comfortable and that's where you enjoy spending time online, do that.
Right.
Like, don't force yourself into Twitter, because there's nothing worse than like forced, awful, cringy tweets. Like that's
Right.
not going to get you more business. It's going to make people.
If you have more of an act for writing, then Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn is probably going to be your target. But if you love taking pictures, you love the creative side, then Instagram is probably going to be Instagram and Facebook. If Facebook is one of the ones that it's kind of like very in between.
Yeah, hard to get away from, even if.
Yeah, especially here, Facebook is such a big part in the Central New York community. Like that's where most of people are, at least have an account. So it's definitely important. I just think the number one thing is to really just figure out what works for your business. So, and I think that's kind of just what I mean by authenticity, because I think it's, you know what you are good at, you know what your level of commitment is, you know what product you're selling, and you know what customer you want to reach, hopefully. So yeah.
Great. So we've talked about like where online should people be, the type of content they should post, and then how to think about the authenticity side of it, like how to be true to who they are, and that idea of connecting with people. The last thing I want to touch upon is voice and sort of that branding aspect of it. And I know that's a lot of your bread and butter. So walk me through just real big picture. If you're a small business owner, how do you find that voice? And that kind of ties back into what we're talking about, authenticity as well.
I think your brand voice comes from, it depends. If you want your business to sound like your personality and your livelihood, because that's kind of the people you like to attract, like you have a very strong support system based off of you, then kind of just create it around, like if you're a happy, bubbly kind of person and want your brand to feel that happy, bubbly sense in your writing, write like that. Write with more emojis and more conviction to be fun. But if you are more like B2B and more like of a serious tone, that's 100% okay too. Just keep it consistent. Don't necessarily use like all these emojis in one post, and then the next post you're very serious, call to action, call this number right now, sales tone. Both work really well, just not necessarily together. And I think when it comes to brand voice, the number one thing I would say is consistency. It's a matter of what you're trying to say. All of your social media should be intentional, with a purpose almost. So your voice should be able to depict that. If you're really just trying to get sales, not necessarily grow a community, which is okay, then keep that kind of in the back of your mind when you're writing social media content. If you are trying to grow kind of a community around your business, and you don't necessarily always want to be selling, then also keep that in your mind. Like, what can you do to get people to specifically engage with your posts?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that mean you're posting for questions, you're asking for feedback, or the other side of it, like if you are not trying to build a community, you're trying to do more sales, post with your phone number, your email, your website, any sales you have going, like be very specific in your content. and make sure that everything you post, like at some point could lead back to like whatever you're trying to accomplish. So if you're trying to just kind of grow your followers and get more people to know about you, not necessarily they don't have to buy from you, then you don't necessarily have to be promoting a product in every single post. It could be just something to engage the people that follow you.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And thinking through, who are you to your clients? You know, some people you're just a straight up, that is where I get this one service, that's fine. But for other businesses and in other industries, it could be more of that connection piece, and understanding like, what am I trying to accomplish and what do I have to post to like get there? I think can be a formula that helps me think a little bit about it. Not that I do any of this, I can talk about it, but I don't do any of this online really for my small business because it is difficult. So maybe that's a good note to end on is, how do you get started with this? If you're maybe recently transitioning to digital because of COVID, your business had always just been brick and mortar or just in more traditional channels, what's step like 1 and 2 just to get going, get that momentum started as you transition online?
I think look at what the other businesses that like-minded businesses are doing, and kind of look at the numbers, see what of their posts are getting more likes and comments and what kind of content. If it feels authentic, if that's like, oh, like that's a good idea to post, then maybe you can kind of formulate it and incorporate it into your social media plan. And then also asking people love, I love personally to see accounts that I follow asking what kind of content they want to see, like, because then it shows that that brand or business is really focused on meeting the customer's wants and needs, and not just blind posting of just to try. And then also just trial and error. You can just try a few different content ideas on your Instagram and look at the numbers, see what's getting more comments, what's getting more likes. Is it growing your profile if that's your goal? And from there, okay, like this content is working. I'm getting a ton of engagement and interaction on there. But this post that I spent a lot of time on isn't really getting a lot of work or a lot of traction from other people. So maybe I don't post this as much. It was really fun to create maybe. But if it's not really serving your business and not really producing the results that you want, then maybe just table it for now and maybe it will work again in the future. The other thing would be to make sure that your profiles are set up on social media, like we mentioned. Make sure that you have a profile photo that fits the circle.
That is so important. It's just like the right kind of pictures to say,
Right.
who are you? There's nothing worse than like a very low res grainy photo on LinkedIn, or someone whose LinkedIn profile just doesn't have a picture, especially when you're trying to do business with people on a personal level. No good.
Right. Yeah. LinkedIn's another huge spot, especially as a business owner, because people like to be able to, if that's your cup of tea, if you want to be more behind the scenes, that's totally okay too. But if you are somebody who really likes the community aspect of it, make sure that you have your LinkedIn profile set up, because LinkedIn is huge for networking. Especially now with COVID, it's super easy to just send a note on LinkedIn that says, hey, I'd love to get on a Zoom. A lot of people are Zoom fatigued, but people are still willing to get on and chat, and because people, especially in this area, are super willing to support your business. And then maybe you can offer something to that business. And then that's another sales avenue if that's the kind of business that you're in.
Yeah, it's a great way to learn from different businesses too. Like, hey, I see you're having a lot of success doing this. Like, can I pick your brain? People love to be the expert, right? Like, we love to talk about ourselves and share our stories. So I think the more you can make people feel like, I'm listening, I care about what you're doing, like, tell me everything, that, you know, that feels good. And I think people are usually pretty willing to share.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you so much for this. We talked about where to be, what to share, how to stay true to your brand voice, and a lot of other stuff that I think will be very useful to especially the small business owners who are watching PAC-B TV. So, Lauren, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I think we should do a series on like topics for small business owners and kind of get deeper into some of these areas.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for watching. This is PAC-B TV, Ask the Expert with Lauren Russett of Russett PR. If you have other ideas for different experts you want to hear from or other types of programming you'd like to see on PAC-B, get in touch, info@pacbtv.org, and you can find all of our stuff online at pacbtv.org as well. And we're on Facebook, so you can get us at there as well. All right, everyone, goodbye and see you next time.